Hello everybody. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the third of the glass cockpit, and that is going to be the Garmin G3X. Now the G3X is a slick display system because not only does it do everything that the G3000 suite does, but it also has the ability to combine it into a single 10.6 inch bezel, which is really cool. The aircraft today we're going to be taking a look, you probably recognize this as one of the CubCrafters. This is the XCub. This thing is actually pretty slick because it uses basically the same engine as you could see on a regular Cessna 172. So our flight today is going to take us out of Danbury Municipal, and we're going to be flying over to Meriden. Now, what you probably notice is if you just take a quick look at our little display here, there are no flight plans on here. As a matter of fact, if I zoom out, you'll see no magic lines. The reason I did that today is so I could take a moment to show you how quick and easy it is to dial in your own flight plan directly. So first things first, this display combines your regular instruments with your MFD/moving map. You can actually change between modes. If you come up here and click full, and you can completely disable that map if you're doing just VFR flying. You can go back to this mode as well if you're looking for kind of that IFR experience. That being said, most of these aircraft that pack this in Flight Simulator 2020 do not have ratings and certifications for flying in IFR, so kind of keep that in the back of your head as well. So first things first, let's go ahead and dial in our flight plan. So to do that, there's a couple different things we can do. First thing we can do is we can go over here to the FPL page like this. Again, I'm using this big knob in the back. Don't use the little knob. And you can just simply go right to the middle one. And now you simply set your origin, any waypoints in the middle, and your destination. So for example, I could come in here and go ahead and dial in our current origin if we wanted. So we could say KDXR, Kilo Delta X-Ray Romeo, press enter. And now we have our start point. We could set an en route waypoint. Let's say we really want to go out of the way. We could do like HFD, which is a VOR. It's going to pop up saying, sure, this is what you want. It's like, yeah, hook me up. And then, of course, we can come down here. I'm actually scrolling with my mouse, but you can actually click this and drag it. So now I can go ahead and set my destination down here. So I'll set destination airport. Again, like I said, we're going over to Meriden today. KMMK. Kilo, Mike, Kilo. Enter. Ta-da! Just like that, you can see we have a complete flight plan done. Now, if we wanted to get a little crazy here, we could actually go, let's say we want to go down to Carmichael VOR or something like that. I could go in here like this and type in Carmichael and press enter, and ta-da! I've got an even crazier little flight plan. So that is one of the greatest features of this, is how quickly and easily you can dial this stuff in. Again, this is for good visual flight rules and stuff like that. Nice trick, too, is you can actually come in here and say, oh, I didn't actually want that waypoint. And as soon as you do that, you can go ahead and reset everything, and now we've reset our original flight, and we're pretty much ready to go. Now, if you're ever in a really super hurry, you can always press this button down here. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and move that, and I'll leave that one in. I'll leave that one in, actually. We'll just hit the back key. Boop. Okay, now you can actually come down here and press this little D with an arrow and actually dial in where you want to go. So in this case, if I click here, let's say I want to proceed direct. I can go KMMK, enter, activate, boing, and you can see instantaneously, as fast as you can click your mouse, we now have ourselves a wonderful little flight plan. By the way, you can click and drag this map if you want to, and you can use this plus and minus to actually change where you are. So in this case, I'm just going to drag. You can see my airport. I could see any critical flight spaces, which I can see. What's a flight space? It's an airspace. I knew that. You could also see there's another airport along the way. If we wanted to, we could skirt around it. And if we ever wanted to recenter our current view, we just press that button, and just like that, we're back to normal. Okay, so now that that's all set up and our flight plan's good to go today, by the way, you're going to do this a lot by accident. And by the way, if this disappears, you can actually left click here and always recenter yourself if it bumps into it. So now that that's all set up, let's go ahead and take a look at the Garmin GPS down here, I should say, the Garmin Automatic Pilot. This one's a little bit simpler than we probably saw on the other aircraft. Notice you have an AP setting for us turning the automatic pilot on. Flight director, yaw damper. Somebody pointed out to me the other day, and this was a horrible mistake on my point, you'd never use the yaw damper until you get up to a decent altitude. That can be very dangerous on the ground. We also have the ability to go ahead and do a flight level change, vertical navigation, which I said is a little wonky, at least, again, it's been a week. And of course, we have vertical speed. So let's go ahead and say our selected altitude today is going to be, I don't know, I'll do 2,000 feet. Okay, that's nice and set. We can go to vertical speed mode, and we can use this little knob right here to go ahead and say what our desired vertical speed is. I'm going to set it to about 500 feet per minute, which is going to be more than enough for us. Now, what about our navigation, our roll autopilot? Well, that's going to get a little bit more complicated, because what you probably notice is if I look over here, it says the word FMS. That simply says that the source for our roll/navigation autopilot is going to be coming from this unit as opposed to our navigation radios. If you want to change this, left click here hit CDI source, and it actually allows you to change which mode it's on. So right now you can see it was FMS by default. Also note that your bearing pointers are visible here. You can go ahead and turn on your navigation 1. Notice it says no data. You're probably saying, why does it say no data? That simply means that when we set up our radios, we never actually took the time to dial in what radio that was. Well, what if we wanted to do that? Well, that's actually not hard. Come down here and press the menu button. Come down where it says nav 1 frequency, and then simply dial in with your finger, well, your mouse, what you'd like to do. You can press enter to put it in standby, or you can press transfer to actually immediately activate it. So unfortunately, you'll notice I still have no data. The reason being is because I'm a little too far away and there's a few too many mountains between me and where I'd like to go. And anytime I can now press the back key. So without further ado, let's get airborne and then we'll take a look at some of the other features. Go ahead and sound ourselves up, release the parking brake, and I'll go ahead and smoothly apply the power this time. All right, I still cannot believe that they managed to put 180 horsepower in something this lightweight. This thing is like 50% carbon fiber. Don't quote me on that, it's just quite a bit. And look at the takeoff distance. And we are up. Wow. All right, now that we're up, we can go ahead and start flying our flight plan. I'll go ahead and give myself a little bit of trim here. Lovely. All right, let's go and take a left. Now, this same G3X system exists in multiple different aircraft in Flight Simulator 2020, and it's definitely worth checking them out because, like I said, that's about as hard as it is to quickly plan a flight on the fly. Now, if somebody called me up and said, hey, could you do such and such and such and such, it would take moments for me to just quickly go through those menus and dial it to exactly what you want it to be. Go ahead and take myself a big old left turn here, line myself up with my desired flight, and I'm going to go ahead and level this off a little bit. I'm still trying to get the hang of the trim in this flight simulator. It seems to accelerate if you hold it longer. Is basically what I've been able to determine so far. All right. I'm going to back my RPM off just a teeny tiny bit. We're working this engine pretty hard right now. That looks pretty good right there. Go ahead and level myself off. I'm going to start swinging to the right a little bit so we can start going back to our proper course. Now keep in mind, you don't have to use the GPS/FMS for navigation. You can use conventional VFR navigation as well. You know, if you wanted to do something like that, I'd recommend coming down where it says full, click on that, and wham, you have your regular old display that you can see that now takes up the entire bottom half of everything. Oh, getting a little bit of turbulence, not unusual. All right, let's go ahead and throw on our automatic pilot. I think I must have bopped that. So now the aircraft is going to go ahead and line itself up with our desired course. Again, if you want to take a look at it, we built this entire course. Whoa, loading up some new scenery. We built this entire course completely on the fly. This is not something we had to go through the regular menu in order to set up. Ooh, getting bounced around nice today. Ah, that makes flying feel so much better. All right, going ahead and taking a right here. Again, the automatic pilot is doing all the work for us here, but it's flying the flight that we assigned. Now, while we're now on our flight here, I'm going to actually wait until we get up to our 2,000 feet. We want to take a look at some of the other functionality of this particular unit. Again, you have to kind of imagine this is basically the G3000, but it's just basically shrunk down into one screen. So let's go ahead and go back to the menu while we're climbing up here. We're getting our warning. So we have a couple different options that we can play with, one being the map option. If we go to this, it's going to bring up the map. If we want to change the zoom on the map, you've got these little pluses and minuses up in the top. Normally on the real unit, you have some amazing little screens that you can bring up here to actually make it easier to see, you know, certain types of instrument approaches and everything along those lines. But that's basically the limitation we have here. We also don't have a weather radar, so you don't get a lot of that functionality in this particular aircraft. All right, looks like we're up to about 2,000 feet. We're getting bounced around real nice this morning. Nothing unusual. Go ahead and bring my power back to about 25 and 25. Again, I don't have the user's manual in front of me, so I'm going to have to kind of go based on what I know, but it seems like we're pretty darn close to our yellow speed there, so we have to be careful. All right, let's take a look at some more options. Active flight plan, you've seen this before. We already walked you through it. If you ever have to go back, you can always mash the back button as well. You can also click away. We can add any points. Warning, if you add a new point that affects your flight plan significantly, that's going to cause you to lose your navigation autopilot if you're using your navigation autopilot. If not, it's just going to adjust this. Remember, the pink leg is the one that you're currently on. It's not going to be the white leg. The white leg is one you've already done, or it is one that you're going to be seeing up in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and go back. And we're going to click right over here. Whoop. I always do that about a million times. Go back to the menu option. And now, of course, we have the procedures page. Now, we're at the airport that we're approaching to. If it had an approach procedure, you could actually come down here, click approach, and then go ahead and decide what procedure you'd like to use. Now, if we wanted to get a little fancy, we could change where we're presently traveling to and then go take a look at that. So I'm actually going to do that real fast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push down on the synchronize to current heading. And you can see my little heading bug now is showing right there. Now I'm going to swap to heading mode. I'm no longer in navigation mode, which means this aircraft is not going to be receiving updates from the FMS/GPS for the purposes of this part of the flight. Now the reason I did that is I wanted to show you what the approach page actually looks like in action. So I'm going to go back a couple times. There we go. Oh, see I've come out of center here? If that happens, just click right there and you'll be right back to center. Let's go to the direct option. Click up at the top. Let's say we wanted to do something really crazy. Let's go to Kilo Bravo Delta Lima. Enter. Let's say activate, and you can see now I've got a direct path, but I'm still flying in the same direction that I was because I'm not changing out of heading hold mode. Now if I went to menu, I could go up to procedures. I could go to approach. Oh no, it forgot exactly which one it is. Lame. If this comes to you, all you have to do is go back to your actual flight plan itself and double check to make sure your destination has been set to where you'd actually like to take a look at those options. So we'll go ahead and change this real quick. Looks good. Again, I'm not changing anything fancy here. Go to the next page, approach, ta-da! And you can see now that we have all of our approach procedures ready to go. So for example, if I wanted to do ILS tree, I could click on approach, I could do tree, I can even change the transition. In our case, if we had a little bit more time in this flight, I could actually do a Hotel Foxtrot Delta, go basically where we were already going, and then spin around. At any time, you can load it or you can load and activate. The difference here is if I click load, and now I go back to my flight plan, if I actually scroll down, the approach is actually below my main flight plan. It isn't where I am at this time. So if I went back to that menu, went back to my approach, I can now mash activate approach. If you do that, let's go ahead and take a look real quick. You can see, let me go ahead and drag it. I love the fact you can drag it. That's so cool. It'll take me all the way to Hartford, then it'll take me on a big old right turn. Zoom out, zoom out. It's going to line us up with Haydux, and it's going to take us right into ILS and tree, which is awesome. I'm actually going to go check something real fast while I'm kind of cruising along here. It actually does not pre-select the ILS frequency. So for those of you who are using this aircraft for instrument procedures, which kind of makes me raise an eyebrow, not going to lie, you have to make sure you actually come in here and say what frequency you intend to use. Otherwise, that's not going to work out so well for you. Okay, so that's pretty much going to be the basics. We're going to go continue our flight. Let's go back to our menu. We'll go back to our flight plan. Scroll down real quickly. We're going to change our destination. We'll go back to where we were going to go originally. Oh, lovely. All right, looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. I'm going to go back. Go back to map mode, center us. Now you'll notice, even though we took all that effort to go ahead and reset all that, it doesn't actually reset our current waypoint. If we wanted to do that, now we have to go over here and go ahead and set this up. KMMK. Boop. Activate. Ding, ding, ding. And now we're right back on course, just like we intended to do a little earlier. So that's going to be basically the functionality of this particular autopilot as well as this particular display. You got to be careful when you're wheeling your mouse so you don't accidentally wheel the mouse that controls your altitude or anything like that. Otherwise, you're going to be bumping into different sorts of issues along the ride. So I'm going to go ahead and look out my window. I haven't actually looked out the window's entire flight. I definitely have to do some more work with instrument flying here. And yes, I did take a moment to make sure my altitudes weren't going to drive me into the ground or anything. But then again, when you've got this display right here, it makes it kind of difficult to do anything like that. A couple other things you want to kind of keep an eye out for. First of all, if you look up at the tippy top here, you have a detail of your current waypoint. What the current bearing is, keep in mind that might not necessarily agree with what your heading is, as well as what your distance is, how long it's going to take you to go, what your ground speed is, as well as your current track. Now, you're probably going, hey, wait a minute, you're still in heading hold mode. And I'd say, yeah, how do you know? It says it right there. So if I actually flipped back to navigation mode, the whole aircraft will now say FMS, and we'll take a teeny tiny turn and continue directly along our path that we were just traveling on a moment ago. That's why that heading hold is so incredibly useful, is it was able to keep us going while we were playing with our GPS. That's a great strategy no matter what aircraft you're operating at any given time. So now that everything's all set and we're pretty much good to go, let's pretend that we're thinking about doing our approach. we could come over here and set our altitude selector down to our approach. Obviously, in this region, we have to be really cautious what altitude we come down to. In this case, let's pretend I want to go down to 1,500 feet. I could go over to vertical speed mode, and I could go down, down, down. Let's say 500 feet per minute. Of course, you've got to reduce your throttle a little bit, otherwise you're going to overspeed the aircraft. Overspeed, overspeed. I think you know exactly what that's like. And now we'll go ahead and cruise down. Every once in a while, don't forget to adjust your barometric pressure. And we're in pretty good shape. I think it's probably a good time to think about landing this aircraft. Speaking of landing this aircraft, look where we are. We happen to be right next to this place. This is Oxford Airport. This is Kilo Oscar X-Ray Charlie. And you know what? We might as well just set it down on the ground now. Automatic pilot off. It's always good to have a button on your joystick for that. Reduce power, and look at that. It's a slightly different destination than we intended originally, but then again, your time is precious. Everybody who's a real pilot is sitting there going, but you didn't do a traffic pattern. At least I'm taking a left turn. At least I'm taking a left turn. All right, that looks pretty good. RPM back to normal. We'll do our gumpfuls, gas, undercarriage, mixture, propeller, flaps, light speed. Taking a look, we are not on the fullest tank. We are now on the fullest tank. Don't forget our flaps. Oop, got to slow down a little bit before we can use our flaps. Now this is a tail dragging aircraft, so you have to be a little bit more cautious with your landings. If you come in too fast, you end up getting 6 or 7 landings instead of 1. All right, line ourselves up. Looking really good, actually. A few more RPM. Yeah, we could probably come even slower than we have to right now. I'm still learning all the individual aircraft myself, but I think I've got a fairly good handle on it. Like, again, not too many surprises. All right, looking pretty good. Ooh, look at that airport. That is a runway that goes uphill. This is going to be extra exciting for us today. Got a little bit of a crosswind, too. Of course, I never checked the winds before doing this landing, but I did look at them earlier. It's just a pure crosswind. We are very low. Speed looks good. Over the tarmac. Gently touch down. Got a little bit of that turbulence. Reduce power. Nose up. And that's 1 landing. That's 2. And that one counted. Haha, we did it. All right, easy on the brakes. We don't want to go tumbling. Remember, you can't steer well until you've got that back wheel down on the ground. Not going to ground loop it. Hey, we didn't ground loop it. Lovely. All right, hopefully this video is helpful. There's basically only one more glass cockpit system we haven't taken a look at, and that's that little GPS unit you have on some of the different aircraft. Other than that, hopefully this has been helpful to you. Like I said, it's always kind of neat to see all these different settings and see how they kind of work with each other. But other than that, enjoy.